So, welcome back to Chasing the Dream, everybody. I'm Ethan, the host of this podcast, which, just for the uninitiated, is an opportunity to talk about the coming together of business in a new way in terms of seeking profit for sure, but in a new light of using that profit to be able to have really positive societal impact. And in that regard, I'm really super freaking psyched to have Allison Claire Alt on the program today. So just let me give you a little bit of background about Allison. Allison, is that okay?
Oh, sure. Great.
Okay. So Allison's a visionary tri-sector leader. And so what that means is being focused on pathologically focused on private, social, and public sectors, all having a positive impact on society. She's an attorney. She's a global executive working in the field of social business and social entrepreneurship for over a decade, and with deep expertise in global compliance and sustainability and environmental law. She's passionate about helping to lead this thing called the transformation to an entirely new kind of business that attempts to pursue profit, but with also positive impact on planet and people. So as the founder and CEO of Business for Good, which we're going to talk about, Allison's mission is to driving the organization to invest in people, to build better business, stronger communities, and a more equitable world. Welcome to Chasing the Dream, Allison.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
It's my pleasure. And I think I said to you before we hit the record button, I've been stalking you on social media, and everything about what you've invested your career doing is so interesting. So the notion of starting Business for Good, I want to dive into what it is. But first, what's been your motivation? Because a lot of people kind of come to this notion of business and doing good for some kind of ulterior motive.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and I came to it I through life, right? I mean, you kind of are experiencing different things and learning as you go. And one of my first professional experiences was I was working on Capitol Hill, and a friend of mine, I did actually healthcare policy at first. I thought I was going to be in government forever. I really wanted to make a difference. So, I'd become a lawyer. I was up there. I was working on the Hill. I was actually working on some, pretty extensive healthcare policy work, trying to make sure that people were covered and had what they needed. And a friend of mine came to me and she said, I'm working at this really neat place. It's a startup. There's only like 10 of us there. She's like, but I feel like every time I go to work, you're meant to be there. And when you get those little like intuitions, you should follow that and you should investigate it, and you're curious. And I remember I like Steve Jobs said, like the dots connect, but you don't see it until later. Right. And that
Yeah.
was a dots connecting moment. Right. So I ended up going to visit her workplace, which was a startup. And it was one of the first for-profit, nonprofit hybrids of its kind. And they worked in workforce development. They helped young people who typically just were under-resourced in their backgrounds to be able to learn tech and then ascend into these careers in these Fortune 500 companies where they were making five times what their family income was after 1 year. And I came into the organization, and you have to understand my father is an entrepreneur and in the healthcare industry, so I grew up around business.
Okay.
And but I never thought of it, in a social way, right? I mean, I understood business and nonprofit and government, they're all
Yeah.
separate, and so this was mind blowing to me that this was a business model that was built by a tech entrepreneur to both create impact and be able to serve the tech industry that had a need for people who were skilled in cyber and different areas of need. And I thought, my God, this business model is brilliant. And and my whole life was dedicated to impact and making a difference. And so I ended up on this team. I said, what do you need me to do? I'll do whatever you want. I just want to be a part of this. And I really believe in what you're doing. And I did. I ended up on that team with some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life. Thank God for giving me that opportunity, because truly these are people that I still talk to today and I'm great friends with and just respect tremendously professionally. And, when you're with amazing people and you have a brilliant plan, unbelievable things happen. And, I was there for about 6 years, helped build the organization. By the time I left, we were the largest workforce organization for young people in the country in history. And it was unbelievable to see the transformation. But what was unbelievable about it was watching um, the sales team work next to the philanthropic team and work together and I'm learning things from the business team, and the business team is learning things from me, from the philanthropic side. And, to watch how those things work together and how they could work together really well, and did work together really well when to drive impact, right, and to drive financial outcomes, because we had tremendous financial outcomes as well. And so from that experience, I ended up just started meeting people in the sector, and I ended up in a role where I was at Social Impact 360, and I was leading the organization. It's an organization of young business leaders across the country, social entrepreneurs, brilliant, brilliant young people. And I was teaching them, right, what I had learned in my career, which felt very natural to me. Totally not what I expected to be doing in my career, but I saw the amazing things that they were building, the brilliant ideas that they had for change in different sectors, and how they were using business models to facilitate, financing, unbelievable solar projects, unbelievable transformations in different industries and energy. And I was blown away by it. I was blown away by like the potential of that to create such massive positive change. And through that experience, started meeting people in that industry who were doing unbelievable things in sustainability, in compliance, in looking at how you could serve a company from the perspective of planet and people and profit. So how do we
Right.
balance those things? How do we drive financial outcomes while also driving social outcomes and environmental outcomes at the same time? And what I realized was just that there's this enormous industry, there's this enormous group of people out there that who already have been working on this for many years, that they have brilliant ideas, that they have so many of these strategies that work. And I was like, my God, like this needs to be brought to people. Like this needs to be introduced to a greater audience, a greater market, because it has the potential to change the future of business. I could see what others really didn't see, right? I could see how all of this could be put together in a way that that could change the future of the sector, right? But it wasn't yet created, right? It wasn't yet put
Right.
together for them to be able to use, or it was only accessible to people who had a lot of resources to be able to use it, right? Um, and I was also getting all these calls. And I think this was the biggest part for me. I was getting all these calls from young people at companies that were in my network at business, at Social Impact 360. And they were saying to me things of the, like, I'm in the business sector, and there's, I go to work every day to pay for my car. I drive my
Mhm.
car to work and I drive it back and I pay for it. And there's no meaning in my work.
Right.
And I feel, and they would say horrible things, they're like, that they're like missing, their, soul, like they just,
Right.
they feel like kind of like the world's crumbling around them and they're not really doing anything to help. And they're also just, not feeling fulfilled in their lives because their work life is not meaningful.
Is
And
that, I'm sorry to kind of jump in, but was that kind of the epiphany for the Social Impact 360 and the feedback you gained there that led to the business for
yeah,
good? Is that kind of the connective
yes,
tissue?
it was the epiphany. It was the yeah, it was the aha moment. It was that everyone was saying this to me. right? It was that, middle managers at every major company you could imagine, right? Or that were ascending and brilliant were saying the exact same thing to me. And then on the other side, you had this entire group of people who were already building something that that had the potential to sort of solve that need, right? In a major way, but they hadn't been brought together yet. And so yeah, it was the major epiphany for me. I said, well, because these young people would say to me, they're in their 30s or 40s, they're not that young, but they're ascending within your top companies, and they're saying to me, do I leave the sector and do I just go to nonprofit, or what do I do? Can I get a job in social impact? Social impact was such a tiny sector at that time. It was really brand new, and it's still not particularly large. And I felt for them. I didn't know, I wanted to advise them correctly, but I also felt like there's no reason why you couldn't have meaning in your job. There's no reason why we can't create financial impact and social impact and environmental impact. We just haven't taught people how to do it yet. And
this is interesting to me because
right.
so people who are, I don't want to say early on in their career, but just in terms of categorizing them, they're future leaders in organizations, late 20s to mid 40s. They're saying to you, I see no purpose with where I am. There must be an opportunity for me to have more impact. And they're reaching out to you to ask advice and counsel where to go to get it. When, and if an organization one would think was wise, they'd say, these are our future leaders. How do we cultivate them and give meaning to them? So they didn't have to contact Allison and pursue some other avenue.
Right.
Here we are.
Right. Exactly. And I understood the problem, and I also understood from the perspective of business leaders that, number one, they just they have their business goals that they have to meet, right? I understand that, right? And they also, I don't think they really understood how to fulfill that need, right? They weren't sure what to do to make sure that, their employees were getting that meaning and purpose while also driving their business goals. There really just wasn't like a template for that, right? Not something that would work long term. And so, what I started seeing was an opportunity for these strategies, these triple bottom line strategies, people, planet, and profit, to be used and to be taught to help employees make really smart decisions in their job, in everything from product to operations to HR to every piece of the business, right? How do we teach people to make these smarter triple bottom line decisions so that they are literally transforming their jobs, right? They are making those decisions that are smarter, that create that triple bottom line operation. So for instance, I started meeting with people who are working in sustainable packaging, product design, who were looking at sustainable operations. And I started saying, tell me about your experiences working in X company and tell me what worked to drive financial and social and financial outcomes at the same time. And I became so obsessed with this concept that I was basically interviewing hundreds of professionals in the field at your top companies for years, and just taking in all of that information, knowing that that information was so incredibly valuable, and could be used by every company, right, that exists. And what if it was, right? What would be the enormous financial and social and environmental impact of teaching all of these employees and all of these companies a better way of doing business, or at least the most impactful things that they could do to create that impact at their companies? And that is how I built Business for Good.
So Business for Good, just to jump in now for the uninitiated, who don't know, the model is, and you've referred to it as a hub, a kind of like a point for people to go to where you're putting resources, information, advice, counsel into people's hands who are building stronger communities, and they're creating positive change. So that is what I'm hearing the model is. And so how does that work in
Yeah.
practice? How do you give that kind of support guidance to people seeking out, as you said, the intersection of profit and positive societal impact?
Right. So what we did was we took all of those strategies that we knew were proven and worked, and we actually created courses, e-learning courses, to teach employees those strategies, and how to implement them into either their company or a larger company by making those smarter choices. And we then realized that if we have these courses, we need to teach people how to implement them. We need to have some way for them to implement them in their company, and people
Right.
want to. They want to take action. They want to do this work. So we actually created what we programs. So we have e-learning, we have programs where people can actually implement what they've learned. So for instance, one of our programs is Service Corps for Business for Good. And people can join the Service Corps, and they work in employee teams. They learn through our e-learning courses these strategies. They can then come up with recommendations for their company. They work through a consulting model that we developed with employees at Deloitte, and they work through that model, and they're able to recommend those things to their companies and actually work through implementing them in our learning community that we built. We built a global learning community with resources and digital products and everything that they need to not just implement it, but to track the return on investment financially, socially, and environmentally. So they can actually see, you know, we implemented this action and this project, this triple bottom line project, and this was the outcome. We saved X amount of dollars. We had this impact on the environment. We had this impact on employees. Maybe we had increased retention, or, we had more people joining leadership. What are the metrics that show that this worked? Right, on every level. And I thought, what would be the impact of having so many teams from so many different companies of employees working on those projects, and also seeing and being able to share that information and best practices with other people who are also invested in that, future of business, and that triple bottom line operation. And so, just the idea of building not just a way for people to learn and implement and grow with that knowledge, but to also create a community and a hub for people who care about this work, that need the resources to learn it, to understand it, to grow in their, in their practical knowledge of implementing it. Because from my perspective, what I said right before it was that, there's all these providers, that are working in their kind of silos,
Right.
on triple bottom line. And I want to bring them together. I want
Right.
them in one place. I want it easy for people to implement triple bottom line operation. And that's what my company, or at least we're hoping to bring to people.
And so these people who reach out to you and say, I'm interested in this model. It matches my values. So, your values construct at Business for Good is equity, and it's access and opportunity and prosperity. But so somebody says, you had me at hello. We had a
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire moment. Allison, I want to implement this. I just need to know how. What do you find are the attributes or characteristics of people who are buying into this
Yeah.
model?
I think you would be surprised. I mean, I meet people every day who are just, who are, in the business sector, who, typically just, have a real drive to, or a demonstrated, need. Maybe they've, ventured into social entrepreneurship, or maybe they were interested in social causes, or maybe they, want to make an impact. Right. I mean, these are, usually leaders, right? I mean, are up and coming, leaders, because there's that desire to do more, right? There's that ambition to do more than just your job, right? There's a desire to make a difference. And so, from my perspective, from seeing young people who are acquiring this, it was up and coming leaders, who were really desiring to have this information, which I also think is so valuable to a company, right? This is a way to grow leaders. This is a way to facilitate them feeling, meaning and purpose for them, staying, retention, staying at the company. So, we see that a lot. But I also was really surprised that, once I described or, spoke with business leaders who were typically very profit focused, right? About just simply the numbers, right? Listen, if you implement X, we know from this case study, right, where it's been implemented at this company. If I'm just going to give an example, right? So let's just say Nike, right? They developed a new shoe, and that shoe used sustainable materials, sustainable design, and based on that, that shoe, performed better than all of their other, products. So, they sold X amount, more than all of their other products in, the millions. They also were able to reduce, their environmental impact, right? They cut costs because the actual cost to create the shoe was less because of the sustainable materials and the sustainable, process that they went through to create the product. And once we're able to show those numbers, and we're able to say, and also, everyone who worked on this project who was an employee was thrilled, engaged, happy or at their job. They want to stay with your company longer. They want to ascend in leadership, and that's proven, right? We have the data that works. We're solving their problems, right? Like
Right.
these business leaders want people to stay longer. They want people to be happy in their jobs. They want to also make profit, right? And I think, and they need to, right? I mean, the company needs to exist. It needs to be financially sustainable. So I think what I'm hoping to do with Business for Good and what I think they're kind of coming around to understand is that I'm solving problems for them, right? And that's how I explain it to them, right? I say, I, you know, I am solving. I am not just solving problems for you. I am also bringing value to you, financially and otherwise. And once I explain that, and once I'm able to prove that, I have not found many business leaders who aren't excited about it, right? Because it's solving their problems. And in my experience for the last decade, when you can solve someone's problem, that is when your idea takes off, right? That is, if you can solve a need, that is when your idea is taken up through the organization. So once I realized we were solving a need in the market, then I really knew it was good. I really knew that we had something important.
It's fascinating, and we could go all day. And I don't,
Yeah.
definitely have to have you back in a subsequent episode to talk more about what you just alluded to, which is the notion of you don't have to worry about having an either or. Either you're profitable or you are able to have a positive impact. That the notion, as you said, where you can use metrics to quantify
Right.
that the result is twofold, or excuse me, threefold, then you probably are at a point where you're able to have a much more influential impact on people who normally would say, Allison, this sounds great in theory, but I run a business. It's not a charity.
Right.
So that's kind of, I'm really glad you kind of took us home with that point. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you and say, Allison, I heard what you had to say on Chasing the Dream, and I want to talk to you. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you to have a follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly visit our website. It's businessforgood.pro. And they can certainly email me directly. It's Allison, Allison, at businessforgood.pro. And happy to hear from them. I'm excited about, finalizing our products and hopefully, like I said, solving a lot of needs on both sides, right? On the employee side, on the employer side, on the societal side. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from them and hopefully partnering with them and continuing to, help drive positive change in the sector.
Awesome. And so just for anybody who maybe didn't capture all those contact details, no worries. I'll have a complete way to get in touch with Allison directly in the description below. And Allison, before I let you go, I have a question is, if you could share with folks where you envision the future of Business for Good going, like what do you have as far as your growth plan, and what ideally would you wish to be able to say in the future Business for Good will be or do blank?
Right. Our mission is to transition the sector to triple bottom line. I don't have small goals, right? When I make a goal, it's massive, and I'm doing that on purpose, right? I believe in the value of what we're bringing. I think it's truly not just important, but it actually is what people need, and it's a win-win for everyone. And there's no reason why this information shouldn't be provided in a way that's affordable and accessible. And that's what we want to do, is make it accessible to everyone, because it matters. And to be frank, if I was a business owner and I was not taking advantage of these opportunities to, have more profit and cut my expenses, and also, have great retention, and also, have my employees be engaged. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer, right? So I'm just really excited about, I think, with the proper support and the proper investment, I think there's no way that what we're doing could not reach that goal. So when I see it, I already see the end. It's almost like seeing, I can see it happening, and I'm trying to tell people, years before, no, it's going to happen. I see it. I'm excited.
That's the epitome, by the way, of the visionaries. You can see out into the future where other people sees the trees and the bark on the trees. You see the entirety of the forest and over it. So from your mouth, by the way, to ears about the transition. So thank you so much for coming on Chazin the Dream. We definitely have to have a follow-up, and I will put Allison's complete contact details to reach her directly in the description below. So thank you, Allison, for coming on the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.